Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. Erik ten Hag is going to be the Manchester United manager. He's going to get a massive budget. He's demanding total control. There's some big news coming out this morning and we've got Incy on the show. He's riding high after a win against Stoke. He's confident he's going to keep them up. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm
Reading,
good, Marky.
Reading manager.
Sorry?
Reading manager.
Interim manager. Remember that
Interim
word?
manager.
Interim manager. Bit like Ranić, but
Ralph Ince. Paul Ranić.
You're in a good mood today. I like it. It's about time you're in a good mood. I'm good, mate. I'm good. As I said, had a good result on Tuesday against Stoke. Very, very important win because it was our game in hand over Derby. So massive win for us. Got a couple of games against Cardiff and Swansea. We can pick up some points there, and hopefully, we can cross that line, mate. But as I said, a long way to go. Can't get complacent, and things can easily turn. So, but yeah, Tuesday was great, important. And we keep going, mate. We keep going.
He's learning Dutch at the moment as well. He's looking for a coaching job under Erik ten Hag. But look, I am in a good mood. And are you happy for me then that I won? You wanted Poch, I wanted Erik ten Hag.
Well, you're not one yet, have you? I mean, listen, I know there's a lot of paper talk and...
It's more than that, mate. Accept defeat. Keep Reading up, that's your win. And I take ten Hag.
Yeah,
You're in the mud with Poch.
You forget, I've got Brentford, remember? You haven't mentioned Brentford.
Yeah, you beat me on that, yeah.
I beat you on that one. So don't forget to, put your hand in your pocket and get that money out for the charity, please. And I want to be there live when it happens. Okay?
I'm happy. We'll film it. I'm happy to do this. We had a little bet at the start of the season that Brentford would go down. I didn't know they were going to scam everyone with Ericsson. So that's what's kept them up. I'll take that win. I'll take Erik ten Hag and I'll happily give that money to charity. That's what
perfect. And we'll do that live on the Marky show.
Anyway, are you're in the ex-player gang that wanted Poch. The fans wanted Erik ten Hag. What's your thoughts on Erik ten Hag? I mean, you did say last week it's mainly because you don't know loads about him. You weren't like some people who were just like, I don't trust him or anything like that. I mean, it's a new step by Man United. It's a step in the new direction. Apparently, they're going to give him a big budget. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, listen, I've always kind of said Poch was right for the job, but then again, I also said that you never know because directors or whoever's sitting there selecting the manager for Manchester United, and we hear it all the time, we've got to get the right man this time. You know what I mean? We've had Moyes, we've had Van Gaal, we've had Mourinho, we've had Ollie. We've got to get the right man. And you never know when you've got the right man until you start winning things and winning trophies and, challenging the top 2-3 for the titles. That's when you know you've got the right man. And it was always a 2-horse race. I don't think United looked elsewhere, which they could have done. But I always thought that Pochettino would have been ideal for the job with his experience of the Premier League. Ten Hag doesn't know the Premier League. I'm sure he's watched it, but having the experience of dealing with egos, big name players like Poch has done at Tottenham, you'd have thought he was a shoo-in for the job. Listen, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Whether he wanted to stay at PSG, I don't know. I presume not, because he's always saying that he wanted the Man United job, but they've gone a different way. They've gone with Ten Hag, and as I said, whoever comes in, they've got to give him a 4 or 5 year contract because that's how long it's going to take for you. Listen, we might be surprised. As you mentioned just a minute ago, they're going to give him a big budget. But United always do. United always support their managers. And we've seen it. We talk about, I think about £500 million they spent on transfers over a period of time. So that United always have to support their manager. And if you're going to try and close the gap on these teams and start competing for titles and winning trophies, you're going to spend a lot more money than most other clubs will, because clubs know that, United will spend over the odds for players just to try and close that gap, because that's what everybody wants. So, looking at Ten Hag, looking at the way Ajax play, very expensive, very open. The Ajax team's always been great teams when Cruyff was there and all that. They've always been a great style of football. They've been, so that kind of philosophy to coming to United is exciting for one. Has he got the personnel to play that way? Probably not at this precise moment of time. He'll probably now looking at players, or might have been looking at players 2-3 weeks ago when he presumably, we're just hearing it now that he's got the job. We might have thought he had the job 2-3 weeks ago, as far as we're concerned. So,
yeah,
he'll be looking at players. He'll be looking at who I can bring in. But that also he's got to think who's going out. Is he going to try and persuade Paul Pogba to stay? It looks like Pogba's going to leave at the end of the season. And that's the thing. As much as all these players are, I'm leaving at the end of the season. All of a sudden, a new manager comes in, and he says, no, I like you. I want you to stay. And then you get to have a 3-4 year contract. And so as much as bringing in new players, he's got to decide which players. Can he persuade to stay at this football club? Is Pogba going to be one of them? Is Jesse Lingard? Donny's coming back from loan after the season with Everton. Not played much over there. So, can he get a tune out of Donny? We haven't seen a lot of Donny, and we spoke about that all this season. He's not had the time, on the pitch when Ollie was in charge. And when he did come on the pitch, he looked half decent. So we could see a new player in Donny. As much as we said we need to change the midfield, central positions, we need to improve on them vastly. We've not seen Donny, so he could be a new player come next season, working under a Dutch coach. So listen, there's a lot of things that are exciting about the new manager, new regime. But we've been here before, haven't we, Mark? We've been here before.
Yeah, it's the first step, isn't it? There's a lot of things that need to follow in it, and obviously Paul and Gary and Nicky Butt, and they're all gutted that we haven't got Poch, but it's going to be Erik ten Hag. Let me just give you. There's a few questions I want to ask you anyway, but there's a few quotes coming this morning. Sky Sports Dutch journalist, I forget what his name was, very good. He's basically said that that the appointment will be official very soon. No matter what United try and brief that it's not over yet, it is Erik ten Hag, which is what we were talking about last night. There was even talk that they'll still interview Poch on Thursday just to let him know he's not got the job. I think he might have figured that one out if he's on the internet. Also, just from the Telegraph, so we're going to go through this. This is what I wanted to talk about mainly. Erik ten Hag has got two major things that he wants, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the Telegraph is saying that Manchester United will have a huge investment in the squad this summer. Obviously, they always do that when they're not in the Champions League because they can't afford 2 years out of the Champions League. And it can be supplemented by sales. Manchester United have already got a very clear idea on what players they want to buy this summer and why, and they will present them to Erik ten Hag, and he will have input on that. First of all, Paul, United have obviously gone off and done work on who they think they should buy without even knowing who the manager's going to be. Erik ten Hag has said that he wants total control on who his coaching team's going to be and players, not just recruitment, but he wants the ability to walk into the club and be able to say, they're not good enough. I don't care what their wage is, what their social media following is, how popular they are in the dressing room. If I don't think they're good enough, I've got to be able to remove them. How important is all this going to be that he's allowed to pick his coaching team? Any player can be sold if he doesn't think they're good enough. And also, he hasn't got the club saying, we've scouted Declan Rice, we want to buy Declan Rice. If he says, well, I don't think Declan Rice is the right man, and the club say we think he is, as we've seen in the past, we've had Mourinho say, I want to sell Martial, and the club has said no. We've had Ranić say, let Lingard go to Newcastle, and they've said no. That is, the manager's the first step, but there's a lot of things that the club have now got to improve on that the media and us as fans are fully aware of, that the managers have not had total control. He must be given total control.
Yeah, listen, I think it's important, listen, you look at more and more clubs nowadays having football directors and technical directors and all these 10s of 20 titles, people getting around these football clubs. But the relationship between the manager and the football director has to work in sync. They have to have the same views on, what players are going to take this club forward. Now, these conversations should have been had. I hope they were had when I've spoken to ten Hag. But they must have said, "Listen, this is."
Well, you'd do that, wouldn't you, as a manager? You surely do that.
If I'm ten Hag and I'm managed getting an interview for the Man United job, and I said to you last week, Mark, I said, "This is how I work. This is who's coming with me. These are my staff. I don't just."
Goldbridge is my assistant. You can like it or not. I know he's a bit of a knobhead on YouTube, but get out.
And that's true. These are my staff. These are the ones that are coming with me. I don't just want to input on who's coming to the club. No, you can't just, because it's funny though, because you get a lot of these football directors, they say, right, we're getting him. And then when it doesn't work, the manager gets sacked.
Yeah.
You know,
You've got to
but
give them
round
control,
about,
haven't you?
yeah, but you're the ones who brought these players in. You're the ones who said that we had to work with these players, or I had to work with these players. That's why I'm called a coach and not a manager, because you bring the players in and I have to coach them. But yet if things go tits up, I'm the one who loses my job. How do you work that out? And you're not being made accountable. I said, so for me, if I was going to lose my job, I'm going to lose the job on the basis that I want to spend £50 million on him or £100 million on him. And that solely got me down to me. Yes, we'll have a conversation. Yes, we'll sit around the table and we'll talk about it. But ultimately, it has to be the manager's decision what players he wants to work with, what players he doesn't want to work with. You know? And if he hasn't got that control, that means nothing's really changed at United, because that means the board is still, in control of everything, and it looks like Ten Hag's just want another puppet. You know what I mean? But I can't see that being the case. I presume Ten Hag must have the final say on players. You know, he knows what philosophy he's got. He knows how he wants his team to play, and he knows what players fit into that philosophy. So
I think that's a great point, because, like, if you're Ten Hag and I'm director of football, and I say, look, Paul, great to have you on board. We've been scouting Declan Rice for ages. We can do a deal for 80 million. What are your thoughts? Well, if you're Eric Ten Hag, you're going to go, well, he's a good player, but have you seen how I coach? I want my midfielder to be box to box. I want him to be playing between the lines. I want him to be intelligently taking the ball. I don't think Declan Rice suits that. There's a lad in Germany who's half the price who does. And the club go, oh, yeah, but Declan Rice, he's a shirt seller. He plays for England. You know, it'd be a big sign. And that. But these are the conversations that go on at United. And you're right what you're saying there. Logically, it can only be you that gets listened to, because you want the player that fits your system, not the player that fits the profile of the club. Yeah,
for sure. And listen, let's not say Declan Rice is a wonderful player.
He is, yeah. Just use him as an example.
But what I'm saying, there's, if you looked at the United team now, and you'd probably say there's probably 4 or 5 positions that he can look at and say, well, no, I need to change that. He can't do what I want him to do. He can, but you're right. I've seen some players in Holland. He probably take 1 or 2 from Ajax that he thinks can come over. And as I said, if you look through the years, it's never been a problem with Dutch players or European players coming over to the Premier League. So he'll have 1 or 2 Ajax players he'll be looking at thinking, yeah, he can play that role. He knows what I want. He knows how the manager thinks. But at the same token, you can't go spending millions and millions of pounds because they're going to sell shirts, or because it's great for the merchandise, or if it's great for the club that we've got the big signing, the big name. It's not about that. Some of these players who, play for City, you play for Liverpool, like people like Firmino, never even heard about, and Marnie, people like that never even knew about them, and, you haven't got to go and spend millions and millions. You've just got to do your recruitment right. And that's something that Man United have not done, for a period of time. And they've actually wasted a lot of money on the basis of poor recruitment. And we've said this time and time again. Well, there's all the other teams that spent less money, apart from City probably, but got the recruitment right. And you don't mind spending millions and millions, but if they come in and do the job and they're the right players and you win titles on the back of it, United have spent millions and millions of transfers on players and they're going backwards, not forwards. So, recruitment has to be spot on, because you can't keep saying every time the manager comes in, we're going to give him a big budget. You can't keep doing it. I know it's United, probably one of the richest clubs in the world, but you can't keep doing it every time a manager comes in. There's another 500 million, there's another 500 million, and keep getting it wrong. Eventually, you've got to get it right. So, for Ten Hag, if he's saying, well, that player doesn't suit the way I play, why would I allow the club to go and spend £60-70 million on him? Or the fullback, I've got one here, it's going to cost you £20 million rather than £50 million. These are all the things that they have to sit down and talk about. And it's going to take time. Listen, it might take him. If you look at Klopp, because we always meant to talk about the balance of the team, and you're not going to go in there straight away and change Manchester United. But when Klopp got finally the balance of the team that he wanted, It took him a couple of years. And you said, yeah, you could see the balance of the team, that it was right, everything was right. He got the team that he wanted. It took him 2 years. Might be the same with Ten Hag. It might take him a couple of years to get the balance that he wants. And that's because there's players there on contracts, that you can't just go in and go, right, out you go.
I think that's a great point, because we've spoken about this a couple of times before. This is not, you look at Arteta. Aubameyang only left 3 months ago. Arteta's been there 18 months. There'll be players, and we don't need to name them, but there'll be players at Man United who Ten Hag will go, I don't fancy him, but I can't get rid of him in the first summer. I'll keep him around, see what I can do with him, but ultimately his card's marked, and he might go next summer. And we're not. I think patience is so important. I think his first thing is to try and get 3 or 4 players in that believe in what he wants to do. And maybe you're right, you bring a couple from Ajax or a couple of players he's scouted that he really wants. That's the way to do it, isn't it? You've got removing players will happen, but you need to get players in first that are going to replace those players, but also buy in early days. And the Telegraph are talking about this huge investment, which there will be. I mean, I think part of that's because it's a new manager, but part of it's because every time United are in the Europa League, they shit themselves that they can't be out the Champions League 2 years in a row. So they'll chuck money at the problem. They'll do that. But they're also saying that the priority positions, and we've spoken about this a lot, a striker, which we know we need a striker because Cavani's going, but 2 very high energy midfielders. Now, high energy to me, I don't know what you think about that, but certainly midfield is something we've spoken about all season, that is, and obviously that was the position you played in. I mean, to be honest with you, they could do with a prime Ince and Keane, couldn't they? Or a Nicky Butt or someone like that. But, he's not two players in that position. We're not having this conversation about Matic, McTominay, Fred anymore. That's going to improve that team massively if he gets the right players. Yeah,
definitely. As I said, the engine room's the most important room. You know what I mean? You mentioned me and Keane. You also mentioned Batty in the same breath. You can't do that. It's not. I love Batty, but he's not along that instant Keane thing. You know what I mean? So
apologies for that.
Don't mention Batty.
Made a mistake.
You can mention Brian Robson because he was the best out of all of us. Okay, and I love Batty.
Bit before my time now. I'm not that old.
Yeah, I love Batty, but don't mention alongside instant Keane.
Sorry, Nicky. I'm sorry. I tried to slip you in. He sent me a message last night. Said, "Can you give me a shout out in the same sentence as Keane and Butt?" I said, "Keane. I've done it again. Keane and Butt. Left you out now. Keane and Ince." I said, "I'm trying to slip it in, but he's sharp now. Since he's had that Reading job, you can't get anything past him. He's wide awake in the morning."
First Scholesy, because he was one of the greatest, Scholesy. Only joking, Batty. But yeah, listen, we've always highlighted from the start of this season that they need some top quality players. And that's why everyone keeps talking about Declan Rice. You know what I mean? That's what it sounds like Declan Rice. So, but he's not enough. I mean, there's not one to say, is he going to go? I mean, there's been talk about it for the last 2 months now. £100 million. Would you pay £100 million for Declan Rice? I'm not sure. He's a wonderful player.
Not when you're not in the Champions League as well. He's a luxury side. He's a fantastic player, but he's the player that Man City buy or Chelsea, isn't he? He's not. United need to rebuild. I'd rather get 2 £40 million players than get 100 million.
Yeah, exactly. And as you say, as I said before, you've got to go and find these gems. You've got to go and find these Kantés that no one even knew about. There's a lot of top midfield players out there, and it's not just about box to box. It's about. We talked about Maguire and the defence and how they get isolated and how the 2 midfield players don't protect the 2 centre halves. How United are so open in the middle of the park, and when teams counter attack and they can't get back. They're always running back towards their goal. So the spine of the team is the most important part of a football team. And you've got to go from goalkeeper to the 2 centre halves, to the 2 midfield players, and the striker and the number 10. So if that spine is what you want, then you can work around the angles. The fluffy bits, I say, left wing, left back, right back, left wing, all that type of stuff. Right wing, you can do that, but the spine has to be the strongest part. And looking at United, is our spine as strong as it could be? And we know the answer is not. It's not. And you look at Liverpool, Van Dijk and Matic. They're even going to book Konate for £35 million. They're always strengthening in their spine. Henderson, Thiago, Fabinho. So you can see, you look at their spine and think, yeah, bang. We're nowhere near that yet. We're nowhere near that. And obviously Matic is now coming to end in his career. He's been a great servant, a great footballer. The jury's always been out on Fred, and McTominay's, I like McTominay's, but is he going to be the player that's going to win titles for Manchester United?
Chuck him on the bench.
Well, listen, he can play. He can play. Listen, he's a good kid. He's a good player. But is he what you need to compete against City, against Liverpool? You know,
It'd be good for you at Reading. I think that's where he's good.
no. Listen, the bottom line is they need to know where the strengths are. And when they need to strengthen their squad, and it's not going to happen overnight. But I think it's essential to have strength in the middle of the park. So Alex used to say, if you win the midfield, 9 times out of 10, you'll win the match, and that's the most important thing. And if you haven't got midfield players to do that, to go up against the Gundoyans and the De Bruynes and people like that, you're not going to win as many games as you should. And there's a big turnaround at United, from not just from a football point of view, but just from a environment point of view, a mentality point of view. You know, when I went to United in 89, 90, you could smell that there was a kind of desire to win the title. You know, and we knew it was a building process. You know, we won the FA Cup. You know what I mean? Then we obviously went to win the European Winners' Cup against Barcelona. But there was a building process. But you could smell it in the air that there was a mentality about the club.
We haven't got that at the moment, have we?
No,
they need to get that.
That's what we need to get. There's a presence at Manchester United. When you used to walk out on the football pitch or line up down the tunnel, there was a presence. You'd beat most teams, you know, or you'd be a goal in front just by in the tunnel, because they look at us and go, "Oh, Jesus Christ, this is Manchester United." That's something they need to get back again, where they've got a presence, where people go, "Oh, come to Old Trafford here against so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so," and you beat them before you even got out onto the pitch. So that mentality, that presence, they're 2 big words, but they're 2 things that make United need if they're going to actually start winning trophies and pushing the top 2 or 3 for titles. And they haven't got that yet. And you can see that in the results. You can see that in the way people or fair players come out and, you know, do interviews, and you think, why did he say that? Why did he do this? Who's allowing him to come and say these things? There's a kind of, you know, it's not a collective thing going on. You know, it's not a common goal. They're not all aiming for one common goal. And until you get a team and a mentality in that culture about one common goal and what we need to do to get to that common goal, it's always going to be inconsistent. What we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years.
I don't know whether you saw the game at the weekend against Leicester. I mean, it was like a testimonial. It was terrible. Fan base has been like that for a while. I think the club represents the club dictates the mood of the fans. That's the same at most clubs, isn't it? What we've had this week, though, is certainly in the last 24 hours, is this massive boost of positivity for most of the fan base that we're getting a manager that's a new direction. And I think everything you said there is true. He's got to get. No, it's not just about the players. It's about when you're walking into Old Trafford and the team comes out. We all know what Old Trafford sounds when it's right, and it's not right at the moment. And that's not the fans' right. That's not the fans' fault. That's the club's fault. You know, like you say, when the club's in tune with the fans and they're heading in the right direction, it's electric in Old Trafford. And we need to get that back. One of the key factors in that is going to be the players. He will bring players in the summer, but we will still have some of these players that maybe aren't good enough next year. What do they do, Paul? You've been a player, been a manager, poor against Leicester. I mean, look, top 4's gone really, but it could get as bad as 8th. You know, they've got to try and finish 5th or 6th, because Europa League, as much as it's not the Champions League, Ten Hag would fancy Europa League as being something that he can use to blood players, and he'll want more games. He will want more games as a new manager, so he'll take Europa League. Everton lost last night. They were shit. They've got to win at the weekend, Everton, if they've got any chance of staying up. How do these players... I said last night, I expect these players to react the same way the fans have to this news. Excited. You know, his eyes are going to be on United now. Do you think we'll see an upturn in the players' performance at the weekend and for the rest of the season, or do you think they're long gone and it's going to be a big job in the summer, really?
Well, listen, I think if I'm a player at Manchester United now, especially a player... I mean, because Ten Hag's probably sitting there thinking, listen, I know he's got responsibilities at Ajax, and I always find it strange, and I never really liked it when, you know, clubs are talking to a manager who's still in the job at another club. Yeah. And I think it's not right. I don't think, because you got to think, well, what are the Ajax players thinking now? Are they going to down tools because they know he's going to Manchester United? And vice versa. Now the Man United players are thinking, well, Ten Hag's coming, you know, I might have a chance next season, or I need to make sure that he's watching every game up until the end of the season, and he's looking at players who he wants to keep, who doesn't want to keep. So I need to up my performance. I need to start performing. But it's one of those because I sensed on Leicester that I would say they're down tools, but I just think they kind of had this kind of mentality that they can't finish fourth. Because of Arsenal and Tottenham winning, they can't finish fourth. So, as you said, it's a nothing game. But the fact that Arsenal lost to Palace on Monday, they can still finish fourth. So, as much as we're saying, yeah, it's going to be tough because Arsenal still got a game in hand, and Tottenham seems to be playing well at the moment, but Arsenal still got to play Tottenham.
So we've got to play Arsenal as well.
Yes, that's what I'm saying to you. So, they've still got a lot to fight for. Everyone's coming out saying, yeah, well, they can't finish fourth now. But things happen, results that you expect to go your way, go the other way. No one expected Arsenal to get beat 3-0 by Palace. And all of a sudden...
You've done well at Reading and everyone said you'd be crap.
Yeah, and I am, but I'm just lucky. So that's got to be a lift for United. Hang about, this fourth place is not over yet. Hang about, we've got a new manager coming in next year. Hang about, I want to be one who's going to stay here. Because there will be players who'll be desperate to stay at Old Trafford. Who want to play on this new manager. Everybody's seen his style of football, and it's exciting. And hopefully he's going to bring this brand of football to Old Trafford. So this should be everything a player wants. Because they know his eyes are on watching these players. So they should be performing. And, we know going to Everton's never easy. It's a tough place going to Goodison Park. I've played there loads of times. It's a very hostile place. So it's a game where you need to stand up and be counted, definitely for sure. And as I said, they've still got fourth to play for. Europa League next year is massively important because there's no guarantee, as we've said, that it's going to take time for Ten Hag. So
it's a route into the Champions League as well, which people forget if you win it.
Exactly what I was going to say. So there's no guarantee they're going to finish fourth, but if they can win the Europa League, they go straight to the Champions League. So if you take away the board and just kind of narrow it down to inside that, it's very exciting times at Old Trafford. It really is. Everyone's looking to see what this Ten Hag's going to bring to the team, bring to the club, what players he's going to bring in. It's exciting times. And I will say that the most important thing is that they've all got to have this common goal, because we've seen there's going to be a lot of players still there from next year that are here now. There's, as we spoke about before, the fragmentation in the change room, different little pockets of groups. The manager's got to try and bring them all together, in the next 2-3 years. And sometimes as a manager, you think, well, he's a good player, but if he's that energy zapper and he's not good in the change room and he's not good for a team point of view, I don't care how good he is, he's got to go.
That's the thing. I know you've got to go and take training in a minute, so you can be quick on this one. But that was the one thing I wanted to ask you before you went was that obviously they've just given Bruno Fernandes a 5-year deal on 200 something grand a week. That's a decision that club have made before. The manager's not had anything to do with that. They're negotiating with Fred and Luke Shaw. I suppose United will say, well, we're just protecting assets. But if Eric Ten Hag comes in, and look, I like Bruno, but he is not a possession-based player. He wants to get rid of it with a pass or a shot. And Ajax, Man City, these modern-day teams, they'll probe on the attack. We saw Man City do it against Atletico Madrid the other night. They didn't panic. They just probe. Foden feeds De Bruyne in. They've got the goal. That's going to be the problem when you've got these big ego players at United who are on big money that the club don't really want to sell or can't sell, and a manager comes in and says, he don't work in my system. And that's going to be the problem, because we know what these players do when they don't get picked. They don't like it. The fractures start, and that's going to be his biggest issue, is whether the club will do what a Man City or a Liverpool or even an Arsenal will do and say, look, if you don't fancy that player, we'll back you. We'll get rid of him. But United have always struggled with that, and that will be the big test, I think.
Well, the thing is that first and foremost, and this sums United up to a T. I don't know whether, and you're telling me now that obviously Ten Hag had nothing to do with the extension of contract for Bruno. Okay, but surely, I know that maybe at the time they weren't sure whether it's going to be Poch or whether it's going to be Ten Hag. But surely if they were leaning towards Ten Hag, they must have said to him, listen, we're thinking about giving Bruno another extension on his contract to 2026. Is he someone who's going to be in your plans for the next 3 or 4 years? They should have must have asked that question, because it's only natural to ask that question. Because, no disrespect, on this season, Bruno's not been like he was the last season. He's not been the same player. You know, he's thrown his arms up in the air. He's moaning at the referees. So what have we seen this year to say, right, we need to give him another 4 or 5 year contract? You know, without consulting the manager, because what might, as you rightly said, Mark, he might come in and go, no, he's not really what I want. You know, I need someone, I'm looking at this way, this type of player. Well, unfortunately, he's just on a 5 year contract. You know, listen, he won't be short of suitors who'll come and get him. But if all of a sudden these players are not playing because the manager doesn't think they suit into their system, and you've got players sat there on 3 or 4 year contracts, you know, as you said, they're negotiating with Luke Shaw at the moment and Fred. You know, I'm thinking, what are you doing? You know, what are you doing? Just wait till the manager comes in. You can't be negotiating with these players. You know, as much as, you know, Fred's done okay, you know, as I said, he's not going to take United to where they need to get to. Luke Shaw, another one. You know, is he going to take United to where they get to? No. So why are we negotiating with these players? You know, are we scared of the fact that we've allowed Pogba to run his contract down? Are we scared that we've allowed Jesse Lingard to run his contract down? Is that what it is? Because we look like fools letting their best players run their contract down? Yeah. I don't know. But surely they have to consult the manager and say, listen, this is what we're thinking of doing. And if there's not that kind of chemistry between the club and the manager and the football director, there's going to be problems before, you know, even walks through the door. There really, really is. So, listen, we'll see watch this space. But, you know, Ronaldo's going to do another year, which is great. But I just think it's a bit rash to give someone a 5 year contract without even consulting the new manager who's coming through the door. I really, really do.
Talk about managers. We're going to have to let Incy go. He's got training to do with Reading.
Yeah, when I finish my season, I'm going to come and give you a bit of training, mate, and put you through your paces.
I'm actually surprised you haven't got me down there training with the lads. Put me in the CDM. I'll teach him how to. I could teach him a thing or two.
I'll tell you, I'm going to keep you to that. I'm telling you that I'm going to keep you to that. Last week of the
I'll be done after. I'll be after 30 seconds. I'll be like that. Get me off. Anyway, look, it's a pleasure. I know you have got to go and train, and some cracking points as ever. And we do. You got weekends?
Got Cardiff at home.
Yeah, big game that.
Big game. They're all big games, according to you. Every time, we're like about 24 hours before that I play a game, I get a text from Marcus saying, "Big game night today, Incy. Big game tomorrow night, Incy. Big game Saturday." So I got.
Actually, just before he goes, I was telling him before we were live what teams of points of relegations have been over the last 3 years, and Reading have got 37 points. And I said 2 years ago someone got relegated with 48. His face just dropped. They were. I reckon I think Championship 43 points. You'll definitely stay up, but probably maybe 40. But just go and win 3. You could catch a few above you. You know, it's all about where you're going to end up. Everton, next Everton manager, Incy. Or learn a bit of Dutch and come and work with Erik ten Hag. Come on, this is what we want. None of these prats on bloody Sky and BT talking a big game because they've been down the gym in the tight-fitting suits. Ex-United players full of gob. He's actually out there doing it. He's actually out managing, keeping teams up.
I like it when you're in a good mood. I love it when you're in a good mood.
All right, mate. Well, I'll let you crack on anyway, but have a good day and thanks for popping on.
Cheers, mate. I'll see you next week.
Cheers, pal. Speak to you in a bit.
Have a good day. Cheers, Dan. Ta-ra, mate.
Bye. To be fair, he is doing a good job at Reading. Not many people get parachuted into a club that's going to get relegated, and he's nearly kept him up. The United stand effect, you see. Anyway, look, yeah, great points from Incy there, and I'm in a good mood today. Thanks for all the birthday messages, by the way. Everybody who said that, appreciate that. That's not the reason I'm in a good mood, because you get to my age, and every year is just a year closer to death, isn't it? But I hate to be blunt, but I am in a good mood about Manchester United and Erik ten Hag. I'm not gonna fake it. I want to just go over some of the headlines because it is a news show as well. It is exciting times ahead, Graham. I agree with you. And but no, look, I've always been a lot of the time over the last 5 or 6 years very miserable about what Manchester United's like, and I'll always be truthful. But if we had appointed Poch, I'll be absolutely honest, I don't know how I was going to react. I think it would have just been absolute abject disappointment. But this is what I wanted. I said, 6 weeks ago was when I went, Erik ten Hag, I'm all in on that. And I've wanted this manager, and I'm very excited about it. There's no guarantees with it. It will take time. I mean, God, I don't really care. Look, if you say something publicly, you've got to accept that people are going to give you positive and negative opinion. I've heard, I mean, there's always idiots out there who use my name or the United stand for retweets because they can just basically say what they like and lie. And I've heard things like, oh, guarantee you'll give him 3 months and he'll be Ten Hag out. Well, look, I don't really give a shit, mate. If you watch the channel, you watch the community, you'll know the crap I got with Mourinho. I had people who were Mourinho out in March, and I was like, give him the summer, give him time. I didn't go Mourinho out until October. I was quite late. Ollie, same thing in the summer. Give him time. Crap, he's gone. So I've actually been late with our last two managers. I am not, and you know as well as I know, I am not going to be there in October if we've lost 4 of our first 8 games, and I'm not going to be there saying Erik Ten Hag out. It's just not going to happen because and this is going to be an individual choice. I know the enormity of this job. I said it in January. I think things are going to get worse over the next 18 months. I still think 4th place next year is really difficult. Arsenal and Spurs are going nowhere. Newcastle will spend big. I still think Villa are a threat. And then you've got Chelsea, Man City and Liverpool. Next season's not a walk in the park. People are talking about we're going to win the league. We're going to do this, that and the other. I don't know what you're on about. Those players are still going to be here, a lot of them. You can't buy 11 players in the summer and you can't sell 11 players. Next season is about, basically, if you're in a link, if the ship is sinking, next season is basically about trying to keep the ship afloat, plug the gaps, and next season won't even be taking the water out of the sinking ship. We've just got to stop it sinking next year. I think it's a good analogy. United are a sinking ship at the moment and it's got lots of holes. Erik Ten Hag's first season is basically filling the holes. There'll still be a load of water on the boat, and that probably won't get tipped out until maybe year 2. I don't think it will take 5 years, but I do think it will take 2 or 3 years for us to be competing. And I would use the Arsenal timeline, really. Arteta's been there coming up for 2 years now, and they've won an FA Cup, obviously, but I'd love us to do that, but I'm not putting any guarantees on it, and I'll certainly be patient. What about Ronaldo in Ten Hag playing style? Will club let him leave? I mean, look, I won't arc out. I mean, you reminded me something there I wanted to say, but it would have been a silly question for Incy. I really hope we get 5 good £40 million players with potential, says Kevin Millington. Well, there's 2 points there from those 2 super chats. The first thing I would say is that somebody said last night that name me players that cost over 70 million that have been successful. And there's a lot of players over 70 million pounds that have not been successful. But United need to be operating around the 40, 50 million pounds signings anyway. I would agree with that. In relation to Ronaldo, can I just repeat what I've said before? I have my favourite players. I think David De Gea has been fantastic this season. Bruno's one of my favourite players. Rashford's one of my favourite players. Martial. I like Pogba. Ronaldo. There's a lot of players there that you'd say maybe haven't had good seasons. I like Luke Shaw as well. There is no player that I'm going to go first game of the season. Why is he not picked in? Why is he dropped in? There isn't. Because if you are on board with Erik Ten Hag, you're on board with Erik Ten Hag. And what that means is if he decides he wants to sign a goalkeeper this summer, because, people talk about De Gea's distribution's not good enough. I'm really not convinced Dean Henderson's better than David De Gea, far from it. I don't think he's good enough to be Man United's number 1 anyway. So it's not like we drop De Gea for Henderson. I think if you want a new goalkeeper, you buy a new goalkeeper. So if we buy a new goalkeeper, if he benches Bruno for Van der Beek, if Ronaldo decides to leave, if he thinks Maguire's the best centre-back in the world and turns him into that, I don't care. Is that surely not what it's all about? It's about what this manager wants to do. But it's more important, it's about total control. And when we read some of the stuff this morning that Erik Ten Hag wants total control on the playing staff and the coaching staff, the Telegraph are saying he's going to get huge investment. But the interesting thing for me in that Telegraph article is that they are prepared, Manchester United, for some kickback from Ten Hag in relation to Manchester United have spent a lot of time compiling their targets for the summer. They know who they want in the summer and they know why they want them. They will present that to Erik Ten Hag and they are open to the fact that he may not be on board with it. Now, the key question is, if I am John Murtagh and I've had loads of people sorting out who we want to buy in the summer and Erik Ten Hag comes in the door and says, we want Harry Kane and Declan Rice. And Erik Ten Hag says, you're having a fucking laugh. I don't want to spend £200 million on those 2. I could get 6 players for that. And the club say, well, okay, we'll get rid of those plans and we'll do what you want to do. Or do they go, well, we're getting Declan Rice and Harry Kane. And that's the problem. Because that's been the problem at United for the last 9 years. Managers being overruled by other people in the club. There's no point in getting Erik Ten Hag or any other manager if he's going to walk in and be told who he's getting. He is a very distinct manager with a very distinct style of play. Maybe it didn't even work with Mourinho. It didn't work with Oli, really. But when you're getting Erik ten Hag or Pep Guardiola or Nagelsmann or someone like that, you don't inflict your signings on them. How on earth can Man United pick signings that are good for Man United when they've got absolutely no idea on how Erik ten Hag works? His system is methodical. You have to allow him to pick the players. You can't just go, well, this is a good player from West Ham or this is a good player from Spurs. He'll work. You can't. They might be very good footballers, but it's how they fit in to the system. We have to back him, but no top four. He has to go, says Robert McCormack. Nah, I disagree. I absolutely wholeheartedly disagree, because top four, I don't agree with that. I don't think you can put pressure on a manager in this situation, because the enormity of the job is huge, and top four will be harder next year than it is this year. Factually, Spurs will be more confident. Arsenal will be more confident. Newcastle have spent a lot of money. Villa will be better. Maybe a Leicester will be better. Chelsea, Man City, Liverpool are going nowhere. It's why the Europa League, as much as I hate saying this, the Europa League is really important to Manchester United next year. I don't think we're going to get top four. I'd be stunned if we get it. In some ways, I don't know that the top four is good for us this year anyway, because it almost makes these players think they've had a good season. I think we need the kick up. I think I hate to say this, but I think actually finishing fifth will be better for us than finishing fourth in the spirit of a rebuild, because these players will know that they failed. They'll be starting from a low point, and then they'll come into the summer with the manager able to pick them up. Whereas if they salvage top four, I think they'll finish the season going, well, we finished well. We're better than we think we are. And I think they need to realise the crap. And then I think they need to be built up by Erik ten Hag. But I don't like Thursday night football. But if I'm Erik ten Hag, I would want Europa League football for two reasons. One, top four is going to be hard next year, so it's another opportunity to get in the Champions League by winning the Europa League if we're good enough to do it. And two, I think he'll want more games. I don't think he'll want to be playing one game a week. Yeah, it means you can coach the team midweek, but I do think that you learn most about your players by getting them to play. And the more times Man United... Look, if Man United are playing one game a week under Erik ten Hag next year, it's going to take longer for them to get used to the system. If they're playing 2 games a week, they'll learn the system quicker. So I think it's absolutely imperative that we get the Europa League. We'll be good to get a good relationship with Ajax, says Steve, and still really nervous about this development going back to the time where Conte wanted Spurs the first time, looked likely, but then fell through because of issues between the club and the manager, says Jacob. Yeah, I mean, look, in relation to Erik ten Hag getting the job, I mean, I suppose there is that feeling that Manchester United may mess this deal up. But I woke up this morning and was very much, expecting it was all a dream, I suppose. And it's not. And I woke up this morning, I saw that Dutch journalist on Sky Sports saying, despite what United say about trying to calm it down, it's done. Every decent journalist is basically saying it's done without saying it's done. It's basically that line, is it? Tell me Ten Hag's a done deal without telling me Ten Hag's a done deal. That's what you're getting from Simon Stone and James Ducker and Manchester Evening News and Fabrizio Romano. Like, if they knew, if the deal wasn't done, some of them would be coming out saying it's not done. And the reality is, everybody wants the scoop. Of course they do. I get that. But the reality is, Erik ten Hag to Manchester United is a done deal, and the players need to be reacting to it the same way that we've reacted to it, which is in a very excited way. United are working on a deal to sign Leeds midfielder Calvin Phillips, says Samuel Luckhurst. I mean, Calvin Phillips would be a very interesting player for Manchester United. I mean, I wouldn't run away with that story and start saying, yes, we're going to sign Calvin Phillips. I think that in the last 24 hours, we've been signing Ruben Neves and Calvin Phillips and Conrad Lema. Calvin Phillips is a very interesting player. He's missed most of this season. I don't see United going for Calvin Phillips. I really don't. I don't think we would go for him. It's also I don't think you can ignore the Leeds factor. If Leeds stay up, would he go from Leeds to Manchester United? It's a big rivalry, but he is an energetic midfielder, and that Samuel Lucker story. Can I just tell you as well? He's not getting that from Erik ten Hag. As I said, the Telegraph have put an article out today saying that Manchester United have compiled a list of players that they think are suitable to come to Manchester United. They'll present them to the manager for him to make his mind up. I wouldn't be surprised if Calvin Phillips is on the list below Declan Rice as an option for Manchester United with Ruben Neves. And I think that Erik ten Hag would look at that and go, I don't want Calvin Phillips. So I wouldn't get too excited about that. I don't think... That's not Erik ten Hag going, go and get Calvin Phillips. That's Manchester United scouts saying, go and get Calvin Phillips. So, but in fairness to him, I wouldn't say he's not the sort of midfielder that an Erik ten Hag system wouldn't mind. He's very energetic. He's obviously used to the Bielsa style of football, so you've got to be good on the ball. But I don't see that happening. And also, I think this clambering to figure out who we're going to sign is somewhat irrelevant at the moment. I think the most important thing that Erik ten Hag needs to establish with Manchester United is not who we're going to sign, it's who he can let go. And as I said, if he walks in that club and says, I don't think this player's good enough, and the club say, he's on a big wage, he's got loads of social media followings, and he's really popular in the dressing room, Erik ten Hag needs to be able to say, I don't care, get rid of them, and United need to do it. Because that, I can tell you for fact, has not happened over the last 9 years. There have been Man United managers, more than one, who've walked into the boardroom and said, sell this player, I don't want them. And the club have said, no, we're not selling them. I mean, it happened with Rangnick in January, but it happened with Mourinho with Martial. But it's also happened with Oli, and it definitely happened with Van Gaal, and it happened with Mourinho 3 times. So United consistently over the last 9 years have told managers, no, you're not selling that player. How can that ever be right? Like Incy just said there, if you're the manager and your board is saying no, how are you ever managing if you can't actually manage? And that has to be, for me, that's more important than signing players, because the club will always say sell to buy. Man United have always been like that, sell to buy. But if they won't sell, how can you buy? I mean, look at Mourinho. I wanted Martial to stay. I disagreed with Mourinho and thought, you know, we shouldn't have sold Martial. But in hindsight, the manager must be allowed to manage. If Mourinho had been allowed to sell Martial, who would he have brought in? Would you take Thomas Lemar at United, says Joel Morris? I've got to be honest with you. I really don't care who we sign. I don't really care who we sign or we sell. I'm not bothered. As long as Erik ten Hag has total control. I mean, as I said, people are going to start clambering around. Let's sign this player. Let's sign that player. I don't care. As long as Erik ten Hag is happy with it, that's the main thing. All I want is a manager with total control, because how can he build his vision if he hasn't got freedom to do it? So if Erik ten Hag wants to sell Marcus Rashford and Luke Shaw, I don't necessarily agree with that, but let him do it. If he wants to sign, I don't know, if he wants to sign Harry Kane and Calvin Phillips, I don't agree with it, but let him do it. So that to me is the most important thing. I think we're always going to have our ideas about who we should sign, but the most important thing is surely that Erik ten Hag has total control. That's where I sit this morning. And it was interesting. Look, you know, I did want to put it to Paul about Poch, and he still said the same thing. He's got the Premier League experience. I thought he was nailed on. But you know, we've had that chat before. The reality is it's not going to be Pochettino. It never should have been Pochettino. Premier League experience is irrelevant if you're looking to win titles. As we know, 90% of managers who have won the Premier League didn't have any Premier League experience. The path I'm looking at now, and I'm not saying it's going to go that, I think in what United are doing with Erik ten Hag is what Liverpool did with Klopp. The great thing about success is if there's a map, you can follow it and you can add to it. And basically, United with ten Hag have got to look at what's happened with Liverpool. How did Liverpool give Klopp the freedom to remove the players he didn't want and bring his own players in, and the patience and build a club around him? And that's what we've got to do. And people might go, well, we can't be Liverpool. I tell you what, we'd love to be Liverpool at the moment. And for 30 years, Liverpool wanted to be us. We're big rivals, but it doesn't mean that you can't learn from you. Of course, you can learn from your rival. Do you think Coca-Cola and Pepsi ignore each other? Oh, we just hate them. they'll see an advertising campaign, or they'll see a new drink that they've come up, and they'll go, "Oh, that's a good idea. Let's do it. Let's do it a little bit different." Our biggest rival is Liverpool. Liverpool are in a title race. They're in a Champions League race. They've won the Carabao Cup, and they're still in the FA Cup. You're going to tell me we're going to go, we don't want to look at them because they're our big rival. They're doing everything we want to do in the way that we should be doing it. I mean, as I said, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Robertson are putting more crosses into the box than most people in the league, most people in Europe. Is that not United's game with putting crosses into the box? Come on. We've got to look at it. And I think there'll be plenty of time to look at who we're going to buy and who we're going to sell. But I think that ultimately we are in a strong position now that we've got the manager. And welcome to the Members Club, Greg's Gaming Corner. Remember, actually, in relation to the Members Club, we've got some exclusive content coming for you on our Members Club. So make sure you click the join button. You've been voting about who your first head-to-head you want me to be. So all these head-to-head videos we've been doing, like Bruno against Pogba, we're going to be doing a lot more of them, but it's going to be exclusive on our members content because there's just no space on the main channel to fit them in when we're doing an afternoon and 8 o'clock and a morning show. So the members community have voted who they want. And it's looking like it's going to be Rashford versus Anthony, which is quite an interesting one now that we know we're going to get Erik ten Hag. So if you want to become a member, like Lucas Courtney has, that will be going up exclusively probably this afternoon as well. We've also got the preview for Everton to come up this afternoon, which I'll be live at 2 o'clock for as well. But look, we're going to get bombarded with news at the moment. For me, the most important thing is that Manchester United have chosen Erik ten Hag. When that's going to be official, I don't know. As the Dutch journalist said on Sky today, Man United can deny it as much as they like, but the official announcement will be coming in soon. And he is the manager, which is what we know. We will take it from there. But look, thanks everyone for watching. Thanks for all the birthday messages. Smash a like on the video. Big shout out to Incy as well. And I'll be back with you live at 2 o'clock where we'll preview the Everton game, but also I'm sure we'll have some new news around what's going on with Manchester United. Thank you very much. Take care, and I'll speak to you all in a bit.